I have no idea what just happened. Well, I tell you what, no intro tonight. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your hosts for this evening's episode. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach, and I'm joined up top by the Hearts of Men, which is the son of Timothy, the available man. And to my other side is poor man's Dr. Phil, Mr. Shift Happens. Other brother Garfield Martin, the consistency coach. He's working, but I'm sure if he is able to join us, he is going to join. And below us, we have the Hearts of Women. Starting off with Miss Dr. Lisa Dove Washington, author, publisher, speaker, crafter, and coach. You got on the other side, on the far side, you got Sister Nodella Sacagawea Jordan, the optimizer, and in the middle you have Lisa Keys, the voice of reason. Everybody, how are you guys doing on this awesome Friday evening?
Great.
Better now that I know how to say that middle name.
Yeah, Sacagawea. Okay,
we got it. We're doing well.
Hey, trust me, I got my lumps earlier, so I had to learn. I had to learn it.
Sacagawea. Well, I ain't letting that go.
And listen, now that I know it, I say it every time. Every time. So it is always a pleasure to be able to join in conversation with you beautiful people, especially when we get the Hearts of Women to join us. And as always, just as equally, it is always an honor and pleasure to join in conversation with the livest chat and social media. So with that being said, again, we appreciate you and we value you for being here because we know that you could be any other place, but you chose to be here with us tonight, and we do not take that lightly. So on this channel, we like to acknowledge you by name. So if you haven't already, get in the chats. Just say hi so that we can speak to you. And again, please do not forget to like and share this video as we getting started here. So that being said, good to see you, Crystal Everett. Welcome to the show. Nick D, good to see you. Welcome. Let's see who else we got here. We got His Divine Appointment. I think I've seen her down there. You go. His Divine Appointment's here. Good to see you. Miss Charlotte Jordan, as always, good to see you. Brother Abe, good to see you, and welcome to this evening's show. Sister Adrian Walthour, good to see you. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry. Adrian is a part of the Hearts of Women as well, but she can't join us tonight, so it is an honor for her to be in the chats, and it's good to see you there, sis. And again, if this is your first time joining us, if you're on YouTube, look in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, put your cursor on the YouTube emblem, and you'll see the flower. Click on the subscribe button. Don't just click on the subscribe button. Make sure that you find the notification bell. Click the arrow beside the notification bell. Click the drop down and then select all. That way you know every time we go live on this channel. I think before we get started, also if you're with us before you guys leave, because you know everybody get busy, we're going to have the Hearts of Women. Their show is going to be tomorrow morning at 10:30, and as always we have Sunday's brunch on Sunday at 11:30, and then shortly afterwards we have Bible study at 2 p.m. Are there any other admin notes that anybody would need to put out or want to put out or want to share real quick? No?
Just join the conversation. This is going to be a good one. I think this is going to
be We already started. They already started backstage. That's why she's saying that, y'all. So I guess, hey, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this party started then. As we get started, I want to apologize for our technical difficulties already, but that's all right. We know how to adjust and get it moving. So slavery didn't end. It shapeshift. It lives in the way we love, parent, and survive, mistaking survival for freedom, chaos, or loyalty, and inherited pain for purpose. How many of us are haunted by a ghost we've never met? The ghost of the ancestor who learned to equate love with labor. The ghost who taught us to armor our hearts so thoroughly we forgot how to feel. The ghost who turned self-destruction into a generational heirloom. We call these ghosts idols, not carved from wood or stone, but carved from Jim Crow, redlining, and systemic gaslighting. Idols we polish daily, praying they'll spare us the pain that we built to survive. But what happens when survival becomes a cage? Our ancestors fought for freedom, but freedom can't live where we're still kneeling to the lives that kept us alive. That love must hurt in order to be real. That rest is betrayal. that our worth is transaction. These aren't choices, they are Stockholm syndrome scripts generations old. What if the very survival strategies that saved our ancestors now imprison you? When did you stop fighting for freedom and start fighting to preserve the chokehold of generational trauma? This isn't a critique. It's an intervention, a rebellion against the algorithms of oppression that is still coded in ourselves. By the end of the show, you'll walk away with the ghost audit, spot where you can spot the invisible prisons in your relationships and career, the emancipation blueprint, learning how to rewrite your story so your children inherit peace and not your pain. And lastly, the covenant pact, where you'll redeem loyalty from cycles of harm to bonds that heal. The revolution isn't in the streets, it's in the mirror. You may choose to stay tuned in and watch generational change become bridges to a future we dare to imagine, or keep scrolling. But ask yourself, who's really free if you're still guarding a cage built by the dead? So tag someone who's ready to stop surviving the past and start building in the future. So as we got into it, as we get ready to get into it, I know that this has been a conversation that I've been looking forward to, and I hope you guys have been looking forward to it as well, because I think this conversation here is going to be like revealing for some people. As always, this is the Empowering Perspective YouTube channel where we believe our opinions, that we are the subject matter experts of our own opinions. And so, that being said, when you guys first heard dysfunction as an identity, what came to your mind?
I jump out there, man. You know, this is something that you hear all the time. Oh, my family's dysfunctional. All of our families dysfunctional. Uh, but when you hear the term dysfunctional used specifically in our community as an identity piece, either for our community or for our family, in my mind, especially when I was younger, it was the mindset uh, that this is how we are, regardless of how we got here, and we just need to embrace dysfunction. Kind of the idea as if functionality is not possible in the sorts, that dysfunction is culturally assigned to us. So that's how I thought about it.
Are we
So
talking?
for me, oh,
Go ahead, sis.
no, I was just going to say, when I think about the word dysfunction as identity, it's basically we have accepted what was told to us that this is how, to Brother Gaddy's point, that this is how things are. And instead of us pushing against it, we just accepted it because either, mama said it, daddy said it, or somebody significant in your life, when they spoke to you, they spoke in such a convincing manner. And because we had also such respect for them, surely they're right. They know what they're talking about. And so we accepted, not realizing that to the question, is this function? And we grew into normalizing it.
When I first seen it, I thought that this is something that we as a people have accepted as something, like Gaddy was saying, something automatically being wrong with within the community, within the Black family, within us as a people, or Black love, and not that it's more about the challenges of the patterns that have developed in response to systemic issues that have been passed down.
You're muted, Lisa.
I'm sorry. My thought about when I heard it was associated with complexion initially, right? And I also thought about the examples similar to what Ms. Nodella said, right? I thought about the examples that were set before us, and that how could these examples that were set before us be wrong, right? How could, because we are taught to honor our parents, right? So how could they teach us something that was wrong, not understanding that they were teaching us what they knew, So I'm so thankful for my parents because they taught us what they knew, right? Not they were teaching us, the best they could. So I think when I think about the dysfunction as identity, those are things that we had to, as we learned to have a relationship and came under the authority of Christ, that we had to learn how to unlearn some of those things, right? The dysfunctional things that we adopted as our identity. So that's some of the things that I thought about as it pertains to this question.
So I'm loving everybody's response, but before I respond to this, I kind of want to ask a question. Like in the midst of this, like what are some dysfunctions that we tie to our identity that you guys can think of real quick?
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to add to it that I thought that it's more of a defeatist attitude. When you just kind of accept dysfunction as an identity, then you've just kind of given up. Because dysfunction is, I just thought, oh my, at first, but then it's kind of like you've just kind of given up on any other, if that's the only definition you can identify, thing you can identify with, then you've accepted all of the mess as who you are. And you're not willing to go past that. You're just like okay with it. You're sitting in it. So
yeah I apologize, Dr. Lisa. I thought you'd already went.
no, you're fine.
So and I love what everybody's saying here, and I love what the chat is saying as well. What are some of the dysfunctions that we embrace like a part of our identity?
If you ask me, I
Living
think
in poverty.
Okay.
I believe the most dysfunctional thing that we hold on to is the easy answer would be history through the lens of our oppressor while we were being oppressed during Jim Crow, during redlining, during slavery. And with that said, the hard answer would be that our history starts with getting off of slave ships. And we never dig any further than that.
Okay.
And that's the limits to who we are. So therefore, if there is no identity, no culture, then where do we grab functionality from?
I think working twice as hard is another one that we accepted and adopted.
I would add, we just set a lot of limits on ourselves. We start off with what we can't do. And then we go to there and we stop. So we stop short of, we always have this limit of, well, we can't do that, or well, we can't do this. So we just set limits on ourselves.
Yeah.
I would think someone said, we the Wonder Twins tonight. Go ahead, sis. She froze. Okay. I think I would start with someone said earlier about pretty much impoverished mindset. And I think that we've made that almost a badge of honor to where if you come from the suburbs, you look down upon. If your family was well-to-do, if they made it out, you're looked as not as black. And that type of mindset allows us to hold one another back and feel good about it. And that's one of those things that to this day I can't stand, when people will talk about you when you speak proper English or you have proper diction, instead of saying, man, this person has something about them that's good. They got out, so maybe they can help me with something. We will badmouth them, call them Uncle Toms and anything of that nature. And so somebody already got to it, but I just want to expound on
it. Okay. Sister Nadella?
Actually, Roland, I don't know what's going on with us in the spirit tonight, but that's exactly what I was going to clarify, that I'm not even just talking about poverty from a financial perspective, because if the mindset is impoverished, then everything attached to you automatically is impoverished. So great job, Roland.
Yeah, I do love all these responses. And I know for me, when I first heard the concept of dysfunction as an identity, obviously, looking at the word dysfunction by itself means that it is malfunctioning. It's not operating and doing, it's not performing the way that it should be performing. So when we look at dysfunction as an identity, it's almost as though we're taking the mal in the function and saying that that's who we are. We are that person or those people who do things differently, right? Which is more so of a dysfunction, and saying that it now is a badge of honor. And so we'll use that thing, that dysfunction, as a staple of our identity. So whether it's and I'm loving some of the things. Not some of the things. I'm loving all of the things you guys have said. I'm also loving the things that are being said in the chats as well, because in the chats you're seeing some of the things like education, stigma being tied to the community. You're seeing things like being a part of the welfare system. Um, we didn't know that we were dysfunctional. Lack of education. I love the concept of working twice as hard and being twice as smart as well. That's another one to it. And I will go a step further. I will focus on my gender, and my gender now can become a dysfunction, because now I'm trying to take that and make that the most dominant thing in the aspect of my being, which now oppresses, or it subconsciously oppresses someone else without me knowing it. So if you don't, if your gender isn't identical to mine, you feel less than, or you can feel less than. And so I'm trying to make that the most dominant thing. So when it comes down to these things, I think all of us are in agreement that we get our identity from one location and one location only. So anything outside of that, anything, and I say that part again, anything outside of that can be problematic when it comes down to our relationship as it pertains to him. Now, speaking of relationships, because evidently every now and then we tend to dive into the relationship aspect. And I think every last one of us may have experienced this at some point in time in our life, where we were in a relationship, and either I was the one that was trying to use an aspect of my identity that was taught to me from a young boy, whether I had to be twice as smart or work twice as hard, or, all of those different things. And I tried to use that in my relationship, or they tried to use it in the relationship. So can you share a moment when you realized that behaviors or beliefs you thought, or just the other person thought, were just who they are, and they were like inherited scripts that came through their lineage of their adulthood?
I go first. I think when I was younger, and me being my sisters and my brother, all of them are very, fair skinned, and I was, to my grandmother on the darker side, and I realized that she grew up where she was half white. Her father was white, her mother was black, and she was lighter, and she would always have some type of malcontent towards me. And the way she would speak about people of darker complexions and things of that nature, over time I realized, like, man, this woman really has a problem with color, with colorism. She has a problem with it, to the degree that she will look at her grandchild a certain way because he's not as fair skinned as the others. And she would tell me things like, oh, you're a handsome young man, but you would never be nothing like your daddy, and things of that nature. And growing up, seeing how people could look at your skin color, but they're supposed to be the same. We're supposed to be one, and they can put you down. That allowed me to see that dysfunction traveled through generations with her, from her, had to be her father, her mother, whomever it was, and down on to her grandkids.
That's good.
So for me, perfectionism was always an issue for me. And what people don't realize, that when you come from let me just say, environment, some of us go to the opposite extreme of from So didn't like how our people were living. And so I worked very hard to be perfect. I worked very hard to achieve this, that, and the other. Does that make sense? Y'all understand what I'm saying?
Ish, yes.
Y'all
You're
hear
going
me?
in and out. You're going in and out. We got like the last part of it.
Okay. Okay. Y'all-
No, still, it's still spotty.
All right. So I'm gonna wait. Let me wait.
Yeah, while she's doing that, somebody else go ahead and please go.
Yeah, I was going to mention, and I'm not sure what the word is for this, but in my family, it was like this norm of we all go to college, we all, the debutante ball and Jack, that was just what we do. And I felt pressure with that because everybody's different, and you grow up, and when that's not really something you're interested in, you feel some kind of way, like you're not part of the family. So you always felt this fear of disappointment, because not that you couldn't do it, but it's just something you didn't do. So for me personally, when you said, when did I realize, I kind of, I was confused at times because my mother being a double major, she didn't have time for nothing else. So she wasn't interested. And my dad's family really was into, introducing you to society and all of those things. But I kind of was with my mom because they were divorced. So I didn't grow that interest in that. But I always felt this sense of I'm disappointing people because I don't want to do those things. And I think I carried that on in generation with my children when my daughter didn't go to college. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing something wrong, because that ain't what we do. We go to college. And I had to wake up and yeah, I had to change some behaviors immediately because I took ownership for that. And that kind of messed me up. And in turn, it was messing up my child, because she was like, okay, well, this is not what I'm going to do. Now she felt like she was disappointing me. So that's kind of how over generations it showed up, where I had to get it together, because that was given to me and I was passing it on. So it had to stop.
That's good.
And hopefully I'm on track at reading the question, but I remember there's a friend we had growing up. She was the popular girl in church because all the adults liked her and all the younger girls loved her. So everything everything was by popular demand. You know how that goes. And I just remember we was having a conversation, and just one day I just remember just saying, well, I get everybody else like you cool and everything, but you need to watch how you talk to me. And anybody know me, I'm just big on respect. I don't care who you are, what title you think you have. I'm gonna respect you. You're gonna respect me, or I'm just not gonna talk to you. Right. And I remember it becoming a big thing. Oh, y'all gotta have cohesion, gotta have cohesion. I was like, but why does cohesion have to mean I have to allow myself to be talked to this way because y'all allow her to talk like this to people? And her response was, well, this is who I am, so you just need to get used to how I talk, or you could just not talk to me. And that was my mindset. And then I remember one of the older women in the church pulling me aside, telling me, you're gonna have to learn how to get along, or you're never gonna be able to get along with a black woman, because you can't be intimidated by this strong character. I said, there's a difference between strong character and disrespect. But that was something that I just continuously got told in life. Like, you have to be able to be talked to this way, or you're not, or that means that you are intimidated of black women. And I don't think all black women talk like that, but that's what I was being told young.
Well, so I will read Sister Nodella's spot comment. She said her Wi-Fi has been spotty all day. My response is, because so many of our people were satisfied with being poor, it pushed me into a complex of achieving perfection, thinking that is how you overcome poverty. Everything about me had to be perfect, from my hair to my clothes. So that was the response that she was trying to share. Lisa, did you get a chance to go yet?
No, I was just going to add, I was thinking as I was listening to everyone, and I had this thing where I wanted to keep the peace, right? And so I thought that, younger, early on in my life, that I was the one who was supposed to take on the blunt of everything, right? And I was supposed to carry all this stuff. And early on, as a young woman who, was a believer, right? That I was supposed to carry all this stuff because I could handle it. Even as a young woman, I was supposed to take on all this stuff, right? And then I learned progressively as God began to teach me that was not mine to carry. It's right there, and it teaches me that it says, "Cast your cares on me, for I care for you." And so I had to learn that I was not a garbage can that you can just dump everything on, right? So I think I allowed that, and this was happening while I was in the religious environment, right? And so I had to learn that I didn't have to take it from everybody, because these people were still in the process of learning and growing and developing as well. So it was not my responsibility to take on all that toxic behavior. And once I learned that, across the board, work, home, whatever environment I was in, that was something that was freeing for me. So that was one of the things that I had to learn, that, and I think it goes to the being strong, right? Taking on all the cares of the different things that was going on in my environment.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of that, to be honest with you, especially with Roland's. But I was the other side of it. So I was the dark skinned brother. And so my entire life, especially growing up, whether it was in the house or whether it was at school, it was always the colorism thing for me. And then it just kind of became a staple of my thinking, to where I always believed that wherever I go, that's the first thing that people see. The other side, the other part of the question, or the other part of the story that I wanted to share with you, is that being raised in a family that's predominantly women. And so when you look at it, you're a young boy and all you see is women everywhere, and one dude. And I'm just being honest. I'm sorry, two dudes, right? One dude was my grandfather and the other dude was my uncle. Well, my grandfather, he was just as mild mannered to a certain degree. Once he got fed up, everybody knew it. But at the end of the day, he didn't really do much. He didn't really stir up a lot of waves. He would come out, he would watch the Atlanta Braves baseball game, or he'll watch Perry Mason. Those were the two things that he would do. It didn't matter what you were watching. If the Braves were playing and Perry Mason coming on, you're no longer watching that. And if you thought anything differently, he would remind you who paid the bills. So later on, as I started to get older and get away from my homeland, and I'm saying it like that intentionally, y'all understand what I'm saying. Once I got away from my homeland, I started noticing other things. And so as I started to reflect, like, this person's single, this person's single, this person's single, this person's single. And I'm like, why? Why is that the case? Now this kind of goes back to what Gaddy and what Lisa was just saying. Why is that the case? And then I started paying attention. And the more I paid attention, it started to be revealed to me why they're single. Right. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever that reason may be, that was the reason I perceived it to be. Because at the end of the day, what I realized is that staple of being strong, which is a derivative of just resiliency, right? It has been that thing. And so, getting to the point to where you feel like, I'm not going to just take this or whatever that looks like. And so it's almost as though instead of and I'm this is an assumption, I have to say it that way. When you're having the mindset of that, I'm not going to take it, it's almost like you strike first. So in the midst of anything, whatever the conversation is, you'll get a slick comment, slick tongue, whatever that looks like, up front. And then that becomes the beginning of a friction, so forth and so on. So that's kind of like how it was for me. I think it's imperative that, and I'll put the question back up again so everybody can see it. I think it's imperative that everybody has to do a scan of themselves and understand where any of those things exist. We talked about a few, but that's only a few. There's a lot of them out there. where those things exist in our life, and then we got to figure out the way to kind of root them out. And I think that kind of leads us into what I tend to call the Stockholm syndrome of the soul. Now, it's interesting because Stockholm syndrome is a psychological phenomenon in which individuals who are subjected to captivity, abuse, or prolonged trauma develop irrational positive feelings, empathy, or loyalty toward their captors or abusers. This survival mechanism often arises in situations where victims feel powerless to escape and perceive their survival as dependent or compliance or cooperation with the perpetrator. Over time, the victims may align their captors' perspectives, justifying their actions or even resist rescue attempts when it comes down to it. And I think as we hear that, I think we can like broaden the aperture and see Stockholm syndrome literally existing in society today, to where we're existing in a system that we know now without a doubt that is oppressive by nature, but yet we'll fight for that very thing because we believe it is the right thing. So, that being said, in your opinion, why do we cling to these survival modes that actually harm us?
Because
Uh,
until we come to know better, that if that's all we know, then that's all we can cling to. However, I do believe, as we, have shared in other lives, that it's also our responsibility to grow. And so some people will remain there while others of us have chosen to move from that place. And so just ultimately is that many of us cling because that's all we knew at the time. But today, here I am, 57. I now recognize those things. And so I've chosen to move away. But there are still some people, unfortunately, even at 57 and 70, they're still holding on because they're choosing to.
um, Lisa said a term on the last question when she talked about acceptance, and I think that's a part of it. It's the fear of not being accepted, right? Which is why we taught to work 2 times harder and be 2 times smarter, is because you want to impress, you want to make sure you go out there and they notice you, because they're not going to notice you because of who you are, because of how you look. And so you got to go out there and you got to always be the standout, and you got to always go harder and go faster, go better. Is it always a bad thing? Is it always a good thing? Right? That can be debatable, but I think it comes to the idea that I have to cling to this system in order to survive. And so what we tend to do is that we tend to take whatever the system gives us and we adapt to that. And so somebody put out there earlier, the welfare system was one of the things we clinged on to. Well, it was a mode of survival for for mothers at the time. And so in that mode of survival, and then we culturally begin to grow based upon that system, at least for the communities that were heavily built on the welfare system. Uh, and if it's education, we tend to cling to those things that fit the mode of education. We get into the Greek societies, and we do all these because we want to. It was why we started our societies, because we couldn't get in theirs, right? And so we do these things so that we look like we are a part of the system, so that we can feel accepted in that system.
I want to add to that, and I agree with what everyone is saying, and it made me think about, as Gaddy was saying, being a part of something that you're so engrafted into that it does become a part of you, right? And you don't know anything else to do, so you become afraid of changing that because you don't know what else to do, and then you're stuck in that cycle of fear, and it's almost like you're afraid to grow. You're afraid to move beyond that because it's all you know. Because and it's the thing that you think that has kept you and made you safe and you think it has protected you, right? But in essence, it's harming you and it's keeping you from growing and going beyond where you are and staying stuck in this place where you can't grow. Like it's like a box, right? You can go so much further beyond that, but you conform to the box because it's what you know. And so I think that when we limit ourselves to an environment or a situation, and we don't, and because of fear that I can't be successful or I can't do this, or no one has ever told me that I can do this, then we stay there and we stay stuck in a cycle, um, and we hinder our growth.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. It's kind of this, and it's on the same lines of the fear of the unknown. So a lot of times we don't want to be the only one that steps out there because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how people are going to treat us when we now become different because we're the ones who step further than the line. So kind of fear of the unknown, and now we're kind of not blending in. Not that that's a bad thing, but I think the fear of not knowing what's going to happen when I do something a little different than the norm. I think that's what keeps people in those safe, as Elisa said, those safe modes, because they're just scared of what may happen, which may be blocking their blessing. But you know, you stay comfortable. Sometimes you take your blanket everywhere you go. Um, and don't realize that there are other options to staying warm, and the blanket is not the only option. But when you don't know, like they said, anything else, you're scared of letting it go.
And if I can add to anything to this, I think we've been, and I'm gonna put my black fist pick in my head when I say this. I think we've been systematically blinded, systematically placed in a position of where we believe that if it's not Europeanized, it's not correct. So while my hair may grow out of my head a certain way, hey, that's not acceptable. I got to put that conch in there. I got to straighten it out so that I can look the part of someone else. Or I got to put some blonde Rapunzel wig on so I can look the part. I got to wear this type of suit. I got to speak this type of language. And we talked a few months ago about code switching and things of that nature. I think when you think that other people's way is right for you, then you start to transition to become like them without even knowing it. So instead of being who you are, natural, loving people, you see yourself as understudy of that person, and that person may not be, like his culture may not be the culture that should be raising your children because you inspire discipline a certain way while they say, no, just let it go. So I think that over Europeanization of a people is my.
I like all those responses, and I want to kind of, I want, as everybody listening, this is, and I don't want to make it just a purely cultural thing because Stockholm syndrome has no, it doesn't care what your nationality is, what your background is, what your gender is, or whatever that looks like. I think just like you heard everybody just answer, I think from other cultures' perspective as well, they go through Stockholm syndrome because they are conditioned to do a particular type of thing. You are instructed that in order for this to happen, you must do X, Y, and Z. And you've done X, Y, and Z for so many years. You've seen your parents do it. Then you become an adult. And then somebody asks you the question, like, why are you doing X, Y, and Z? Because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Well, no. Have you ever looked at X, Y, and Z? Like X, Y, and Z ain't right. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm gonna do it, right? And so that's really what that response looks like. I've had a few conversations earlier this year about something very similar. Because the thing that we do every year that I really just despise so much, it's a thing. It's a thing that we do, and we have no rhyme or reason of why we do it. They say we must do it, therefore we do. But never at any point in time until like recently did people start asking questions like, why do we do that? And when did we, when were we told that we had to do it? So I want to kind of paint that perspective as well. because I don't want people to listen to think that we're only just talking about ethnicity. This goes far beyond ethnicity. This also happens in relationships. I was raised to Saturday mornings is cleanup. So when I wake up on Saturday mornings, we're gonna clean the house top to bottom before we do anything else. You were probably raised like, hey, we clean as you go. And so while you cleaning as you go, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. Like, what you doing? Oh, I'm cleaning up. Why you clean it up? That's what Saturday is for. But now I clean as I go. That way we ain't got to do that much on Saturdays. All right, then all right, let me know when you're done. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of can create a rift between two people. I think when we really start peeling back the layers of this and see where do we have a fixed mindset on a thing and say that this is the only way that it must be done, and we hold so tightly to that thing to where we can't see it any other way, you are a slave to that mindset, and that is problematic. It will be problematic regardless of where you go, who you meet, or anything of that nature. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out on the table as well and see what y'all thoughts were there.
Well, and I was gonna say you can push it the whole. You can go way to the left with that, or you can go way to the right with that. I'll use, and I'm just gonna throw this out there as an example. But I mean, when I was growing up and younger, I mean, there was just a certain way you presented yourself when you went out of the house. It just, you didn't go out of the house with your hair all over your head. You certainly didn't go out of the house with pajamas on. I'm just tapping in, but I think that people have, although we can, step outside and it doesn't have to be, we were very stringent about certain things, but at the same time, you can go way to the left, and it's like now you just go outside and it's not a thought in the world about what I look like. I should be able to go to church like this. I should be able to go to, and there's no limits. And I think that's where we get lost, because we don't find that middle ground. We like defiant. We're not going to do it because this is how you all said it was supposed to be. So now I'm going to do the total opposite. And I think we go too far. And I just say just everybody. But I have my own personal feelings, but I know because I was raised a certain way, you didn't even answer the door if you weren't presentable. And, some of that stuff just doesn't seem to matter anymore. And yeah, I cringe at times, but I know that we have to, times change or whatever, but I think some things should stay the same. I was
And
We
if I could piggyback on what she's saying, because I was going to the hypersexuality, I think that that's definitely not a color thing. That's everybody. In generalization, that's every culture is hypersexual or hypo masculine or hyper masculine and all these other things. I think when you look at TV back in the day, Lucy and her husband, they slept in Ricky. They slept in separate beds. They didn't even sleep in the same bed on TV. And now you see some things on television that like, whoa, that wasn't the norm. Just like what people walk outside, somebody put the bonnets and pajamas and things of that nature. So when you just start taking all the rules and throwing them out, then it's changing the whole culture.
I think we call that lawlessness, in a nutshell. But anyway, I had a question really when you were talking, Coach, because you talked about a lot of it being taught behavior, and so if it's taught generationally, then by the time it get to me, is it still Stockholm?
If you embrace it and you fight for it, yes.
But what if I didn't know that it was from is oppressive? I thought because my grandmama taught me. So like, can it be Stockholm for her, but because it was taught to me as a norm?
Yes, I do. The minute that you accept it, embrace it, and fight for it, it is now Stockholm's. That's the issue. That's why I say when you have that fixed mindset that adopts that thing and fight for that thing, even though you don't know whether that thing is right or wrong. It's kind of like, and I'll go here for a quick second. It's kind of like the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and then they get to the point that they're complaining. They say, "Did you bring us out of here for us to die?" Right. So now they're getting to the point that they're missing their oppressor. They want to go back. So it's kind of like that same thing. And that's the key. The point which you just said, that is the key. In most cases, it's taught to you and you don't know that it's not wrong. I mean, you don't know that it's wrong. And so because you don't know that it's wrong, you'll fight for it. Going back to the whole, like you mentioned, strong black woman. That's something that's taught in most cases, right? Trust me, I've seen it. It's taught in most cases. And so trace it all the way back. Big Mama, did a lot of that. And then Big Mama passing on and so forth and so on. Hypermasculinity is the same thing, right? I'm the man of the house, pounding my chest, rule with an iron fist. A lot of that is taught. And so what ends up happening, then it goes from generation to generation to generation to generation. And so when you look at it, grandma single, mama single, daughter single, all of that. Why? Because at the end of the day, they're holding on to something, and that thing that they're holding on to is fighting the very concept of relationship.
Coach, can I add to what you're saying? I think at some point, I think that we are without excuse. Okay, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say why. Because we don't stay in those environments. We're outside of those environments. We see other examples. Some of us do, right? We may see it on TV. We may see it at a friend's house. We may see a different example of that, and then at that point, that's when we question. Well, this is what I've seen, and then we begin to ask ourselves these questions internally: which one is right, more right? Not saying that one or the other is better, but then that's when we have an example. That's when we have this choice in front of us to say which one is more right. So there is another example that we can see. So we can't say we never saw another example outside of the environment that we are exposed to.
Can I chime in? I want to take this to a biblical, spiritual perspective. As believers, we should be developing, and the Word of God, we know, has an answer to every single thing. If we're reading the Word, it has the answer to every single thing. And so if you have been in the way for a while, and if you pray regularly and you're seeking understanding and guidance and all these different things, if God is who he is, why would he leave you? I'm going to use a phrase Paul says. He says, I will not have you to be ignorant to these things. There was things that he was addressing. And I'm just using that. I didn't quote the whole scripture, but I just wanted to use a piece of that quote that he said in scripture, helping us to understand as believers, what we once knew should not be what we are holding on to. What we once knew, we should not be holding on to, because what the word says, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. All things are passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Anything that does not have to do with our current and our future, that should pass away to the old man. And we should be striving new. And what we're seeing is people are trying to become new while yet holding on to an old thing. It's like me having on this raggedy bathrobe. This isn't a bathrobe, I'm just saying. Me having on a raggedy bathrobe, I go buy a brand new one, and instead of getting rid of the raggedy one, I put the brand new one on top of it because it's so comfortable. So then why did I go and buy a brand new one if I still was going to continue to wear the old? And so we have to, if we are really in the way and we're seeking the will of God for our life, we should not be rejecting when the opportunity presents itself and say, hey, sis, that way of thinking, we don't think like that as believer. Brother, we don't think like that as believers. And so I think that's part of what's missing as people are living out their life. I'm not judging anybody's Christian life. I'm just making a point of, we have to remember, if we are reading scripture, we have take the scripture for what it says. And if it says, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation, he's a new creature, then why are we holding on to old mindsets? And I'll be the first to admit, when I first came to know the Lord, yeah, I had some ways, and I drug them along like Linus with that blanket. I drug those habits along for a while. Why? Because I did not understand that scripture when he says, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things are passed away. I did not understand at that moment. It took me a minute to understand. And then I was like, wait a minute, hold up. You mean to tell me I don't have to be like this? No, Della, no, because you're in Christ now. And when I got that understanding of what it really means to be in Christ, it means that we are to be made, we have been made whole. And so I started getting rid of that stuff as I understood. And so I pray that we understand that if we are saying we are in Christ, we should not be holding on to old stuff, especially stuff that keeps us in any form of bondage. The only we have, and that is unto Christ.
I like what you said, Nodella. I think that, but to go a little further, I think sometimes how we were taught to study, or as you said, read the scriptures, were led to bondage. So we will still think that I'm not having church unless somebody hooping and hollering. I'm not having church unless somebody jumping over the pews and running around and foaming at the mouth and things. And those are things that we hold on to. And we didn't have church until somebody put their finger in their ear, hold their head back and yell that he died. Didn't he die? I think that leads to a level of ignorance that is placed on self, because now I know better almost, but I choose not to study, for I'll read. Yeah, I read this and I read that, yet you haven't studied, so you haven't necessarily grown in that area. And for me, I want to just add in there, I think when it came to, I had to change one of mine, was whooping kids. Because I grew up, if you did it, hey, slide that belt off and just get to tapping. Wherever it hit, it hit. And I had to learn that, hold up, this is a part of that Stockholm syndrome that Coach was talking about, because this was learned and taught down. It's something damaging, but it was taught to me. It was taught to my father. It was taught to my grandfather. So now I do it, and my kids, they think, oh, so then when they go to discipline their kids and now I know better, I say, no, I don't do that. They like, oh, you did it to me? Yeah, I was stupid when I did it to you. But now I know better, and I'm trying to teach you a better way so that these kids won't have the same mental scars that I have from when I grew up, or you have. So I think that's what I had today.
Very well. I agree. Roland was raised under the tutelage of Pootie Tang. So, that's y'all don't listen. We like to have fun here. Listen, if you're listening to us and you have not hit that like button yet, shame on you. Hit that like button. YouTube like the algorithm. We like it. So go ahead and hit that like button and let us know that you're enjoying this conversation. Next, we're going to dive into the epigenetic betrayal. Your partner was ghost written by trauma. This is, I think we're going to enjoy this one. Epigenetics is the study of changes in gene expression that are not due to alterations in the DNA sequence itself. In other words, it refers to how your behaviors and environments can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. So, if that is the case, why do many of us fear? Why do many of us fear? Now, typo, I do apologize. Why do many of us fear healthy, loving relationships? Feel that healthy, loving relationships might mean losing ourselves. And where do we get these ideas? I ask again, why do many of us fear that healthy, loving relationships might mean losing ourselves? And where did we get these ideas?
Because I got to go back to it again, that we did not understand what healthy, loving relationships were, because many of us had no idea of who God was, because we know he is love. He represents what love is, and he has shown us what healthy, loving relationships look like. But many of us were not exposed to that. And I'm not going to just limit it to, I don't want it to lock myself in that if you went to church, you knew, because, even to Roland's point, that there are a lot of things that were done in church that really weren't healthy or beneficial, but that's what they knew. If we don't get a personal relationship with the Father for ourselves, we will never know what having a loving relationship really is, and not have that fear of losing ourselves in that relationship. When I was married, I gave it no attention because I understood my role as the wife. But lo and behold, I did end up losing myself, as he has in quotes. I basically put myself on the back burner, and I attended to everybody else. I made sure everybody else was attended to. So some of us, we didn't even feed into that, but we do also, with this question, recognize that some people do have that fear. But today I have a better understanding. I don't have a fear, but I have a better understanding that I can be in a loving relationship and not lose myself. And that's only because of him. And I'll stop there.
Man, I'm a little not torn, but I'm going after that. But I do want to put out that this is not a response to what Miss Nodella said. 'Cause I agree. It's just gonna sound like it because she went first. But I say that to say I think the problem is a lot of times when we look at, now we talking about where does it come from. I know we can go a little culturally historical, but I think we were taught, at least where we are right now, a lot of us were taught to look at the work that we do and focus on what we want out of the relationship. And so when we talk about healthy relationships, the healthy relationships is about me doing, right? Both parties need to adopt that mindset. It's about what I'm bringing to this relationship. But I think so often, we forget that the other person is doing work. So sometimes we get caught up like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and you're not doing nothing. But the work that person is doing, is very necessary. And we can go and talk about what a woman should be doing, what a man should be doing. But there's three people on this panel that don't have specific qualifications to tell a man what to do. And there's three people on this panel that don't have specific qualifications to tell women what they're supposed to be doing in relationships. But we go from that angle and we focus on how we feel and what we want. So if we talk about healthy relationships, that means sometimes I'm not, and it's not that relationships got to be hard, but sometimes I'm going to be tired. Sometimes I'm going to feel like I did a little more than she did, but that's all right. I did what I was supposed to do, and sometimes she going to feel that way. But when we focusing on things like that, other than what we are bringing to one another, how we are treating a relationship and treating one another, then we're going to head down this road to where we would sabotage a chance at happy relationships because I don't want to work too hard.
This is a really good question. And I think we're going to talk about this more than once this weekend. So what do many of us fear that healthy, loving relationships might mean? Why do many of us fear that healthy, loving relationships might mean losing ourselves? I think the first thing that comes to me is because we're not taught about covenant relationships and becoming one, the importance of becoming one. We talked about this in Bible study, and they're so important because but we're focused on losing ourselves. We're not focused on becoming one. And that's our goal. Our goal is to become one. Um, and that is so important, because then if our focus is I'm making sure that I understand, first of all, I've done the work already before I even try to merge my life with someone else. I've done the work. I've considered my ways. I examine myself. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do before I try to join my life with someone. And that's not saying that my work is complete, but it's saying that I've done a lot of the work before I've tried to join my life with someone. And now I'm merging my life with someone. Now we're in the process of becoming one. And that means that I can't be selfish, because I am now becoming one. And if anything I do, then I am affecting the other person, and the other person, whatever they do, they are affecting me, because we are one. So that's the first part, right? And where did we get these ideals from? Well, we got it because I'm a strong Black woman and I'm an alpha male, right? Not that we're becoming one so that we can have a strong relationship and that we can glorify God together and that we can prove his will together. But we are having these independent thoughts so that we can have independent identities, and we are not focused on becoming one. And then I'll land there.
And I just wanted to kind of add to that. I think sometimes we don't even know the definition of a healthy relationship. I think people just get the definition. They have these expectations. They've watched the past and developed an idea of what a healthy relationship is, and they try to meet that. And that's not necessarily a healthy relationship. But if you kind of embed that in your head, is that, oh, I saw that this is what happens. And, take for instance, the about having too much mouth as a woman, and that you're not supposed to do that, and that's why this happened, and we start to make excuses for that. You deem certain relationships as unhealthy, and yeah, she's the one or he's the one based on what you've seen or heard, but we really don't have a clear definition of what healthy actually means, or even loving, because of what Sister Nodella was talking about, because we don't have that relationship. We haven't learned what love is. We haven't learned what healthy is. We haven't learned ourselves. All of those kind of are the reasons why and where we get these ideas, because we never tap into any of that. We just start mixing and mingling and living life without doing the work.
She got a nice frame and he got some nice abs, and that's what we go with. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's our metrics. That's what we judge things by.
Because we watch Barbie and Leave It to Beaver or whatever we watch back in the day. I don't know. We watched something and we saw them.
Or he got a nice car. He makes good money.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we make our decisions based off of material things that will not last and will get old.
Dr. Lisa, you said we don't have an example, and I think I beg to differ, because I think we do have the example. We just don't use the example, because we have a lot of people that we get advice from people who aren't connected to the source. And if we go to the source, he tells us how to treat one another. He tells us how to be within the marriage. He tells us how to be in relationship. But we'd rather talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and things of that nature, things that sound good in the moment, instead of getting down to the nitty-gritty of the making this thing work. I think that, and a lot of times we have people, we learn to speak through our pain, because we've listened to this person, listened to that person, and I like what they said. So now I'm going to speak through my pain. So I'm going to say, well, Black women this, and she going to say, well, Black men this. And all that's doing is keeping us separate, keeping us on the opposite ends of the spectrum, instead of us coming together, learning, why can't we talk about the hurts without it hurting you? Why can't we deal with our problems to where we can be fruitful? And then we have fools saying, well, because you take care of your spouse, oh, you're handpicked. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm henpecked, but it's a problem. And you're listening to people who don't have anybody, who looking to use people. And instead of listening to somebody who has some sound mind, we listen to those people and say, well, go and just, sow your raw oats. Yeah, he going to send them. They going to Queen, sow your raw oats and these things. And now you're looking to use people and abuse people instead of lifting one another up.
Now, I can agree with you, but what I will add is, for example, and we talked about this in a previous question, because you say we have examples, but I didn't. As younger, I didn't see that in my home. I saw the very opposite. Now, I'm gonna give it to God that that's the reason why I still, did not equate that to a healthy relationship, but it's all I saw. So, I mean, I just knew I don't want that. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that's it. But I didn't have really anything to go on, except for what I saw, and it didn't make me feel good inside. So that was my only example. And I think sometimes, and I'll kind of equate domestic violence to it, is that once you see that example, even if somebody good comes to you that is connected to the source, somehow you make excuses for why, no, this is a game or this can't be real. And you stay safe with what you thought, even though that's not the healthy, that's what you deem healthy because, okay, well, they were together a long time. So, you know what I'm saying? Like the length of it. So I get what you're saying, though. Absolutely. I just think that sometimes the example is what we envision. And so we never recognize a good thing. Sometimes we never recognize it because it doesn't look the same. It might be much better, but it doesn't look the same. So we just kind of discard it as that can't be real. That's just fairy tale. I hear people say that all the time when, yeah, sometimes people are doing some wonderful things with their spouses, but people don't believe it. I think that's a sign of that people don't believe. People don't really do that. Like that's not real. But I get exactly what you're saying.
And I think you said something that kind of like ties in with what Roland said when you talk about we have envisioned our own examples or our own fantasies of what relationship look like, and that becomes problematic because you cannot impose on me your fantasy. And I'm not saying you, but just and so we do that a lot. My dream woman does this, and this. Well, you hold up that mirror of perfection, you'll never find no one that'll meet it. You'll always find a reason to walk away. But when you talk about the source being connected to, so I think the problem is, how do we identify people who are connected to the source if we don't have understanding of the source or of the Father? Most of us only have, what we hear in church or what we heard on the sermon that we liked on TV or on YouTube. None of us actually, and I'm not saying none of us, but a lot of us haven't actually dug into it to actually understand who he is, what he says, and so we don't know what it looks like when someone is connected to it.
So yeah, I agree. I love all of what everybody's saying. And Roland, you're right. Shaq racking the goat ain't the example to look at when we start talking about relationships. I'm just going to, keep it real. But I think when you go back and look at the question, and I put it up again. I think the starting point for this question is self. If you're going into a relationship worrying about yourself, then already the relationship is not healthy and it won't be loving because you are the central focus of your concept of relationship. I will start there. That's where that fear has already taken place before you even given that relationship a chance. Going back and looking at relationships that we've seen growing up, whether it's mom and daddy or grandma and granddaddy or auntie and uncle, or whatever the case may be, that should be your starting point for an example. You should not be trying to mimic that. Once we start mimicking or attempting to mimic what somebody else doing, as far as relationship is concerned, we're already at a loss because we're trying to use their example to, like Roland said, we already got an example. So if we see what they're doing and we see some great qualities in there, let that be our starting point, not our destination. And then from that point on, we can grow from that point. We can grow moving forward in the relationship. I think the problem is we look at relationship as a destination as opposed to it being a journey itself. When you get into a relationship, the relationship is a journey. right? So both parties are learning about themselves. And because that relationship requires both parties to learn and consistently and continuously, if you already, I'm going back to Gaddy point, if you already have in your mind what it looks like, there's no place for me to be in that relationship except for you to give me the script and tell me how to fulfill that role. That's not a relationship, right? That's the exact same thing that we came out of. That's another form of bondage. So when we start looking at these things collectively across the board, looking at the figures and the abs and the cars and all of those superficial things that don't equate to a relationship, well, you're not necessarily looking for a relationship. You're looking to add to your assets. That's what you're doing. So you're using people to get assets. So when you look at this fear, that fear stems from a concept of lack, more so of a survivalistic concept. However, I do have another question that spins off of this question. What if my fear now becomes the methodology that I use to select my mate? Can I now see why that all the relationships that I get into, they constantly look, even though the people look different, those relationships look the same. Do you guys disagree with that? Agree with that? What are your thoughts there?
Give me more.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Because I see where you're going and I'm trying to picture it. Yeah. Can you give me some more?
Sure. There was a song that came out years ago. I don't want no scrubs. Remember that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, y'all remember that, right? all y'all used to sing it, right? No, dude. Notice none of us did this right here. No dude sang that song. But here's the issue with that song, and I'm just using this as an example. The more you sang that song, I don't want no scrub became a part of your subconscious thinking. So now, guess what you became hyper focused on? Scrubs.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want it, but that's all you've seen. And so next thing you know, you at that point, and this is just an example. I'm not saying that this is exactly how it happened, but out of all of the scrub, you chose the best of the best scrubs. But yet he was still a scrub. You know what I'm saying? And then the relationship failed. And I'm like, okay, fine, I got to go find me another relationship. I don't want no scrubs. So now I'm finding another scrub. So I've showed the best of the best scrub, and they keep failing over and over and over and over again. And then you're like, well, ain't no good men out there. No, boo-boo. It's not that ain't no good men out there. It's that your subconscious memory is looking for scrubs and you don't even realize it. So that's what I mean when I say when we look at the things that we fear and the things that we don't want, does that how does that let me ask it this way then. How does that affect our selection criteria?
Oh, I used to fish. I used to fish. And believe it or not, I did. I used to fish. And when we would be bass fishing, I would have bait on there for bass fishing. And if I'm up in the lakes in Michigan and stuff, I would fish for perch or trout or whatever up there. I think some of us, we never change our bait, but we go into watering holes expecting to catch something different. If I get bass bait on there, I'm going to continue to catch bass. So me sitting up there making them perky, me sitting up there putting the eye line and all that other stuff on, you going out there with the same bait. So you're going to catch this, you're going to hook the same big mouth bass.
I wasn't ready.
As a man, you sitting up there going where you go and you sitting up there, you cashing them out. You throwing money in their face. You going to catch the same big mouth bass. That's how I see it.
So you're saying what you focus on, that's what you draw, is what you're saying. Right?
Absolutely.
With your energy flow. Okay. All right. So I understand what you're saying, right? I wasn't in that era. I wasn't, I wasn't single. So I don't even recall the song. I don't know much about it. Thank goodness. So I don't know about the trauma that it may have caused. But I do know I do understand what you're saying. What you focus on, what you're thinking about, that's a principle that I know you've talked about many times, and that applies across the board, right? Financially, in your behavior, just across the board, it applies. So what you're thinking about, if you're focusing on that, that's what you're going to attract. And so, yeah, I agree with that. What you're saying, that if I'm thinking about this is what I don't want, that's what I receive. If I'm focused on this is what I want, This is what I need to focus on. This is what I need to put all my efforts in, my attention on. That's what I'm going to receive. So,
and I think so. This is why I'm not a fan of the list. You hear all these conversations and people have this list of what they're looking for. And that's the exact problem with that, is because, and me and my husband have these conversations. When you're young, you're looking for petite, you're looking for whatever it is that you're looking for. And then when you get older, you're still looking for that same petite little girl. Do you realize that, you have to change with the time? So if you're still looking in that space, it's kind of the same thing Roland was saying. It's like, okay, that's why you can't find, because your list is not growing. So when you write it down and it's the list, it's still the list 10 years later. Therein lies the problem. The list has not changed, but the rest of the world has changed. Not the writer of the list has changed, and yet the list hasn't changed.
See, so my conclusion is the same, but my navigation is slightly different, right? Because I think let's go back to the TLC song, right? Now, I didn't sing the TLC song. I can't remember the dudes that made the male remix. I used to sing that version. But
what's that song? What is that?
It was
don't
no pigeons. That's what it's called.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah, I didn't. No, I'm sorry. We needed our get back. Nah, I'm joking.
Don't do
that. but I think what the difference is, if I'm focused on those scrubs, I think the problem is I'm looking at everyone trying to see if they're a scrub, right? And so I'm not really focusing on what the quality that I should be looking for. I'm looking for the quality I shouldn't be looking for. So everybody looks like a scrub. And then when I find somebody that I want, they end up being the scrub because I ignored, because they showed one good sign. Oh, they do this one thing that's on my list. Like you brought up the list. Oh, I saw this thing on my list, but you missed, because I was driving my best friend's car. I wasn't riding in the passenger side. So when I picked you up, I was driving his car to go pick him up from the airport. But you didn't know that. So you didn't know I was a scrub, according to the song, right? But I could be riding in the passenger side because he's taking me to go pick up my car. I had to take my car in, so he's taking me to go get a rental or something. But because you're looking for the scrub, you miss somebody. And I think that for me, like I said, my navigation is different, but I think I get to the same conclusion. We end up with what we're not looking for, because we're hyper focused on the negative things sometimes. Oh, you don't got this, you don't got this, you don't got this. You look like, oh, you're a scrub. What? Okay. Well, what the opposite of a scrub look like? The song don't tell you that.
It does not.
Yeah, it's wherever your energy go, wherever your focus goes, your energy, wherever your focus goes, your energy flows. That's just it. And I think a lot of times what we don't necessarily realize is that the same fears that we have already before a relationship may present itself becomes the lens in which we choose our mates. So to go anything fearful, expecting a positive outcome, is not going to work. It may look good in the beginning and it may last a little while, but it does not necessarily last long. And I want to go back to what I said previously about seeing other people's relationships. There's too much comparison going on in this world today. I don't care what, Ezekiel and Bertha May had back in the days. That's fine. That's great. That was for them. Maybe some things they did were good, and right. It's just you may adopt. But at the end of the day, Tyrone getting with Tamika had a different set of parents. They had a different set of rules. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to merge what you've seen both of your parents. You got 6 people in a relationship right now, and y'all trying to figure out why it ain't working. Too many people in this house. That's the problem. Too many people in this house. So when we stop looking at and comparing what other people got, when we look at what we've seen growing up and let that be the ground floor of the potentiality of the relationships that we can have, then I think we'll get to the point that we realize that, look, within the space of this relationship, anything is possible, right? We don't have to pigeonhole ourselves based upon what they did or what they did. Right. We have the potential to grow based upon what we can imagine and think according to what he instructs us to do. So that's kind of like where I'll go with that. And please don't start singing that song off backstage because y'all know how y'all get. Y'all like to bring y'all like to bring stuff up. Listen, we're getting close to the end. Man, it's like so many things I want to bring up, but it's let's see. Why trade souls for titles? I want to go there because this is in essence what we do because of the things that we embrace. And at least I think you brought it up. We had to be twice as smart, work twice as long. We're chased the corporate title, trying to get to the top of the corporate ladder in our years of existence and things of that nature. So I just kind of want to put this question out there. Why do so many Black men and women feel their worth as partners, parents, spouses, and friends is measured by how hard they hustle, equating to prestigious titles and finer things? Why y'all leaning back, man? That's what I know. Y'all supposed to be leaning forward.
Because this is a jam-packed question right here. Because you said, why do so many Black men and women feel their worth as partners, right? Parents, spouses, friends is measured by how hard they hustle, equating to their prestige, title, and finer things. And I think it's because, like you said, they're looking at what other people have, right? That's one. And I think they take their focus off of God and the promises of God, and they focus on material things. I think I was reading the scripture in Hebrews this week. It says that everything is going to pass away. It described the earth like it was going to be rolled up like an old garment. But the thing that was going to remain the same will be God and his word. And so we focus on things that are going to pass away. And we're looking at what someone else has, and we focus and we will wear ourselves out, and we don't focus on the things that are so important, our family, and taking our time to maybe drive that older car for a couple more years, longer, so we can spend time with our family, which is more important than having this big car and this big house that we can't even enjoy because we're too busy at work for 120 hours a week. I'm just using that as an example. But I'm just saying, we can't even enjoy it because we're too busy trying to keep up with everybody else. So what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? And the very thing that you're working on, you have this family, but you can't even enjoy it. Why? That's just my contribution to this question.
And I think that we unfortunately, I think a lot of people have just kind of sipped on the Kool-Aid that tells you that if you have these things and you do these things as you've seen it done, that somehow you will get happiness and you will get these, something else greater. And it's just not true. But I think that people believe that, so they hustle for it, and they hustle for it, thinking that somehow when I have all of these things and I'm living like, the Joneses or whatever, that here comes all of the, whatever they think. I don't know where, I can't say personally where they think this is coming from, but I do think that they believe that this will lead me to that. And they're just misguided. I just think that they bought, and I always say drank the Kool-Aid. They really started believing something that really doesn't exist and is out of order. But if you believe that that's the order that it goes in, then you're going to hustle to get all of that stuff first, not realizing that that has nothing to do with what you're actually probably seeking.
There was a time in our community in this, I'll say in the South, right? More so, I heard it probably once or twice up north, but maybe before my time because not that old. But anyway, where they would measure a woman based upon whether she was married or, whether or not she had kids by a certain age, or, if she divorced, and and so you equate all this hard work towards a man that you're not even married to because you're trying to get chosen, right? I don't like on social media when they use the term pick me, but because it's falsely assigned to people. They're assigning it to women who just want to do womanly things. They don't want to be the head of house. They don't want to be masculine, so they'll call them pick me's. But the idea of the pick me comes from the fact that the elder women used to judge their granddaughters, their daughters, based upon whether or not they got married and had children. Men being judged about whether or not he can get a job, or he work hard, or is he out there in the field working, or is he putting stuff together in the house. And not saying that we shouldn't be cutting the grass and fixing the house if we can, but it's like we've put so much detail on what things look like, and so there's a status attached to that. So you got women who are chasing the ring so that she can look good to Big Mama, or what the name you used earlier, Coach? Birth something.
Bertha May. Bertha May.
May. Yeah, all of them had a May in their name as the middle name. You're right.
Hattie May comment too. You're right.
Oh yeah, Hattie May is my ex-mother-in-law's actual name. So
let's not do that with the names.
My bad.
You about to get a phone call after this.
I'm waiting for somebody to call my grandmother's name, and I'm gonna be like, "Wait a minute,
Right. Hold on now."
When you go to Fannie Mae now, we're gonna have to talk, okay?
Yeah, that was next. No.
We run from Fannie Mae because they want their money.
Right. And she want it now.
I'll give y'all a call later.
But no, we so we grew up conditioned. So someone put like it's taught behavior because we grew up learning that. Like now, the thing with women are about degrees and job titles, and so they put a lot of work into that. Not that men don't have degrees, but we aren't pushed into the education system like our women are. Our women are being pushed into going and getting that college degree so that you don't need no man, but not demonizing anybody with a degree, but that's what you hear a lot. You need to make sure you're successful because you need to be able to do whatever they can do. You're gonna out earn the man, blah blah blah. And so we put all these concepts in our heads that we need these titles, we need this prestige, we need to be seen on social. I need to put a post out there showing me graduating with my master's or pen and sergeant major. So I need to go out and work and never take care of home. But
I make mine short and sweet because I had to write them down. It masks a deeper insecurity of fear. It masks a deeper insecurity or fear of not being enough without a bunch of stuff. Then if I have all this stuff, I can flex and show pretty much that I'm just a better scrub than the next man. We get a I made it attitude because I look at people that I came up with, and if I have more stuff than them, now I can put myself as being the high school man of the year like Martin was. And some people just get that attitude of I'm the prize if I have all these trinkets. And if I have more, then I'll attract someone with more.
Oh man, she has a storm in her area, so that's why she is struggling the way she is tonight. I'm agreeing with all of that. Like I think Lisa, you started it, and I think what you said is kind of like where I was at. We have the wrong perception of relationship, and I said it wrong. I think I'm gonna start where Roland was at. You'll go out there, and especially for men have this notion that the more money I make, the better car I drive, the nicer house I have, then that becomes a feature of attraction. But then by that same token, as they get older, they realize that they're attracting the wrong thing by doing that. And so in essence, now they become the attractor of the scrub, right? And I'm joking when I say that, but they become the attractor of a person that they don't want, even though that person might be attractive, right? But Just because it looked good on the outside does not necessarily means that it is good on the inside. Everybody know what a lemon lot is. You've been to the lemon lot and the car looks really good until you got up under the hood and realized it didn't run well at all. And that's what ends up happening. We don't do the necessary level of work on ourselves. And so we mask it, like Roland said, by acquiring stuff. And we look good and we drive good and we got the expensive clothes on and we smell good. But then by the same token, if those things require me to work 120 hours, Lisa, goodness, if those things require me to work 40 or, and I say 40 or more hours a week, then what do I have to give my family when I come home? So all I do is work, right? I go to work, I'm on the grind, I get off work, I come home, I'm tired, I'm looking for a plate of food, a hot bath, and I'm probably gonna fall asleep so I can do the same thing over and over again. So the hustling thing really takes away from relationships. So you're gonna have to make a decision. Do I want healthy, loving relationship, or do I want the bag? That's what society call it today, right? And if you want the bag, I'm not telling you that you can't have the bag, but in your mind, you think, well, I can have both. Good luck. Good luck with that. Because at some point, you may find a person who wants the benefits of the bag. But how long do you think she's gonna sit there and be lonely while you out there getting more bag? And that's really what it equates to. So I just kind of want to say that and add that to it because I love what everybody's saying here because you guys are spot on. Listen, as always, greatly appreciate everybody and everything that they add to the conversation. But as always, every week, this takes us to our bittersweet moment, which is our final thoughts. And because I don't know if y'all seen the private chat, Dr. Lisa, you're on deck. And then we're going to go to Lisa, then Roland, then Gaddy, then Roland, and then myself. If Nadella make it back, we'll get her in as well. Okay?
I absolutely loved this conversation tonight. This actually, the questions, I think we mentioned that earlier, but the questions literally made me go, but I think these were really thought-provoking questions that we all should consider regularly to think about where we are, what we're doing, how we're moving, how we're thinking. So I'm really looking forward to actually a deeper conversation with all of these questions. I really enjoyed this. It makes you think about and prioritize what's important to you in life and creating. I think someone mentioned something about more of creating memories instead of collecting things. So I think we need to go more in that direction of creating memories. They really do last you throughout good and bad times. So I really enjoyed this. So I look forward to doing this again. So I know I'm saying this again, but part 2 of this. And I also thank the gentlemen for allowing us to join them. This was really great. So have a great weekend.
You're muted.
I enjoyed the conversation as well. It was so much that you could take away from this. One, if I could leave anything with you, is to say that we are all learning and growing, and we continue to learn and grow in this community. What we do have a show coming up tomorrow morning, the Hearts of Women. This is the Hearts of Men. Tomorrow morning at 10:30, we have the Hearts of Women. We have a program, and right now the title leaves me, but it is on my Facebook page, and you can go to the Empowering Perspective YouTube channel. We will be live at 10:30 in the morning, and we're going to be having a similar conversation as well. We're going to be talking about conversation and how we talk to each other. So we're going to continue this conversation as well as we're going to be having the Sunday brunch as well on TikTok under the Mindset Coaches page. And this conversation to me is something that we need to continue to have. And we don't know how, if we don't know how to be in relationship, one thing we want to do is we want to learn how to be in relationship. And we can learn how to be in relationship together in community. And we can do that as we continue to study who taught us how to be in relationship with each other. So I ask you to continue to come back to learn with us as we grow together so we can have healthy, meaningful relationships and we can grow together. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for having us.
Broken Idols, How to Shatter Cycles You Mistook for Purpose. Understanding first the universal purpose, right? So he said, the scripture said, to hear the whole matter of the thing. Here's the whole duty of man, that we fear Elohim and keep his commandments. And that's the universal purpose. In that, you'll be able to identify what real purpose is, and not attached to systematic purposes. It's okay to have a job. It's okay to own a business, but that's your occupation. But is that your purpose? Christ was a carpenter. That was his occupation, but that wasn't his purpose, right? And we can follow that all the way through. Whatever you do it for to the glory of the Most High. Let's get out of this concept of my life purpose is about making this much money, about wearing this clothes, or about having this title, or driving this car, but it's about pleasing the Most High. And I think when we get there, we get to that space, purpose reveals itself unto you. That's all I have.
Broken idols, how to shatter cycles you mistook for purpose. I think media stereotypes and misinformation often emphasizes hypersexuality, absentee fathers, angry Black women, and the I don't need you mentality within our community. How to fix it? Self-work, therapy, and you have to be able to cut off things and people that don't help you grow towards your purpose. That seems simplistic, but it takes work and discipline. And I think that's where we need to grow. We need to start disciplining ourselves to where I don't need a person, but I want that person in my life. I don't need this job, but I want this to do. So when your only need comes from above, then everything else you can place in its proper place. You can position yourself to thrive and not just survive, and all those other talks that we've had before. Because at the end of the day, you have to realize that you are enough just by yourself. You don't need another person to complete you. But if they're with you, they have to be on the same wavelength. That's all I have.
So I am going to forego my final thoughts because I think what they said was enough. There's no need to continue to beat a dead horse. I agree with everything that they're saying. We got to get to the point to where we can identify and symbolically release those taught behaviors, those taught concept that does not do us well, or anybody else, so that we can do everything that they talked about. So that being said, greatly appreciate you guys. Just wanted to add one more piece. Tomorrow morning show, 10:30 at the Hearts of Women. The title is The Weight of Words, Accountability in Our Conversations. So let's all support the Hearts of Women tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. And on behalf of the Hearts of Men and the Hearts of Women, to include Sister Nodella Sacagawea Jordan and Sister Adrian Walthour, you guys have an awesome rest of your evening. And don't forget, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.